All right, let's get right into it. When the economy is tanking and everyone's feeling the pressure, how does a leader keep their team moving forward? We're going to look at two completely different strategies that came out of a real-world high-stakes crisis. So that's the big question, right? In a tough spot, what actually works? Is it better to light a fire under people with threats and pressure, or do you try to light a fire within them with a shared vision? That's what we're digging into today. And to figure this out, we're going to a pretty intense setting. Greece, right in the thick of its 2013 financial crisis. A study from back in 2014 by Antonios Panagiopoulos looked at 30 different CEOs and their employees to see what leadership actually looked like when the chips were down. And what the research found was that basically two very different leadership playbooks emerged from all that pressure. So let's break down what those two philosophies look like. Okay, first you've got what's called inspirational motivation. And look, this isn't about cheesy motivational posters. We're talking about leaders who are genuinely sensitive to what their people are going through, who build real trust by making personal sacrifices, and who lead from the front. They're in the trenches with their team. And then you've got the total opposite, fear motivation. This one's pretty straightforward and pretty brutal. It's when leaders basically use the bad economy as a weapon, constantly reminding employees, hey, if you slip up, there's a long line of people waiting to take your job. When you see them side by side like this, it is just stark. One is all about building people up with trust and purpose. The other is about keeping them in line with threats and the fear of being replaced. I mean, they're two totally different universes. So the big question is, in the middle of a massive economic crisis, which path did most of these CEOs actually choose? Well, the answer is pretty surprising, and honestly, a little depressing. It wasn't even close. A tiny fraction, just 13% of the leaders, went with the inspirational approach. The vast, overwhelming majority, they leaned hard into fear. Let that number just sink in for a second. 87%. The default strategy for the vast majority of leaders in this crisis was to use threats and the fear of getting fired as their main tool. And this quote from this study really says it all, doesn't it? This was the message. Shape up because you are disposable. It's incredibly direct. Meanwhile, that small 13%, they were speaking a completely different language. Their whole focus was on creating a vision, caring about their employees as individuals, and finding meaning in the work. It's just a night and day difference. So, okay, which one actually worked? Well, the results were pretty clear. In the companies with inspirational leaders, everyone, leaders and employees, reported higher morale and better productivity. But in the fear-driven workplaces, a massive 91% of employees said their morale was tanking, and they felt more anxiety and even depression. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but maybe fear, as bad as it feels, at least gets results in the short term. And that is where this whole story gets really interesting. Because here's the thing, almost 3/4 of the leaders using fear actually thought it was working. From where they sat, they looked at the numbers and said, yeah, performance seems okay. They felt like they had things under control. But that surface-level view was hiding a huge, ticking time bomb. There was a critical problem that was slowly eating away at their companies from the inside. And here it is, the fatal flaw. 100%. Every single one of the companies that relied on fear reported that their staff turnover was going up. They were getting short-term compliance, sure, but they were bleeding talent. The strategy was a leaky bucket. So this all points to the real lesson from the study. Being an inspirational leader isn't just the nice thing to do. It's the smarter, more sustainable thing to do. And here's why that is. So why does inspiration win out? Because it taps into something deeper, that internal drive we all have to do good work. It builds real commitment, not just forced compliance. And you know, that commitment is absolutely crucial when things get messy and a company needs to change and adapt. At the end of the day, fear might make sure someone shows up to work to get a paycheck, but that's it. This study shows that if you ignore our deeper needs, for respect, for purpose, for growth, it's going to cost you big time. A truly resilient team is built on so much more than just fear. So if we boil this all down, what's the takeaway? It's really 3 things. 1, fear is a short-term fix with a massive long-term price tag in turnover and morale. 2, inspiration is what actually builds teams that can last. And 3, the best results, the ones that stick, they don't come from top-down control. They come from genuine empowerment. And that kind of leaves us with one last thing to think about. In your own experience, in your own workplace, what are some of those hidden costs of leadership? You know, the things that don't show up on a quarterly report right away, but end up having a huge impact down the road. Definitely something worth chewing on.